Hey, everyone. Welcome to the VO Boss podcast. I'm your host, Ann Ganguza, and today I am so very excited to have special guest Jessica Blue with us this morning. Yay!
Hello! Thank you for having me.
Hi, Jessica.
Hi.
For those bosses who don't know Jessica, Jessica has been a voice actress for 20 years and is an English dubbing voice and casting director on some small projects like Netflix, Disney Plus, HBO, Hulu, Amazon, and more. And of course, that was sarcastic for those of you that I want you to be able to read that acting. Jessica, you can give me some tips if I have to dub over it.
Okay.
But as a VO talent, some of her clients include small names like Google, Microsoft, Macy's, Wells Fargo, and the list goes on and on and on. She's also provided voices for several dubbed films and series, and some of her dubbing projects that she's directed include No Gain, No Love on Amazon, Crooks from Netflix, Moving, Hulu, and Burning Betrayal, Netflix. Jessica, it is a pleasure to have you here this morning.
Thanks for having me. I'm super excited.
Yay.
To talk with you.
Yay, yeah. So I want to say it's just been so wonderful, like, knowing you for the past few years, and I wish I had known you like 10, 20 years ago.
Same.
Because, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've had you as a guest director for our VO Peeps a couple of times, and I'm going to have you coming up this year as well for dubbing. And I guess I want to start with the bosses that are not necessarily familiar with who you are. Let's talk about your voice acting career first and how it all got started.
Cool. Well, I'm originally from the San Francisco Bay Area, and I grew up watching cartoons like a lot of kids. Bugs Bunny was my favorite, and I just loved being in that world of imagination and where anything could happen. And I thought, wouldn't it be cool to be a cartoon someday? Not knowing that was voiceover. And it wasn't until many, many years later when my ex-husband, of all things, heard this woman talking on the radio about voiceover. I'm like, what is that? And he thought I would like that. And so I took a intro class, and I completely fell in love, dove headfirst and took all the classes, learned as much as I could, and then eventually got an agent up there and started working in video games and commercials, a little bit of animation for games and stuff, and then a lot of narration as well, and then slowly migrated down to LA because there was a collective of us in that group that really wanted to do animation, and so we created our own show and pitched it around and down here in LA, and I'd come back and everybody had kind of already migrated and moved down here, and I was the last one because I still had a whole life up there. I had a full-time job up there. I was taking care of my parents, and one day my dad just said, sounds like you need to be down there. Why don't you just go? I'm like, I have to take care of you. I have to do all this stuff.
Aww.
There's no way.
Yeah.
Best day of my life because he basically gave me the permission. It's like, you need to live your life. Stop doing this for us. Do what you need to do. Follow your passion. I'm like, I love you, Dad. So it took me a couple more years to get my ducks in a row and finally leave the corporate life, which was the best decision of my life ever, and made the move down to Los Angeles in 2013, and didn't have a plan B, didn't have a job, didn't have an agent down here, nothing, but it was all focused on voiceover. And I had already come down here for like the year prior to sort of get the lay of the land, network, take classes with directors here, just to sort of immerse myself in the LA culture, in the LA VO community. And then it just kind of took off, and got an agent, started working, getting more jobs, and met awesome people like you and Jeff Howell and all these other amazing folks. And just been doing it ever since. And then Jeff Howell is actually the one who got me into dubbing because he had a project come up, and he says, I need your help. I need you to help me organize all this stuff. And I'm like, okay. And we kind of started doing dubbing together and did about 6 movies together, I want to say. And he says, okay, you should be directing. You need to be directing. And I had expressed an interest in directing. And so it just kind of shifted into, I was still doing acting, but I love directing so much. And
I feel you.
It was so great. And so
Yeah.
I've sort of shifted now. I still do a little bit of acting here and there, super picky and choosy about what auditions I do, who I read for, all that good stuff, because I really have a focus more on directing and stuff. So
Right.
that's where my passion now lies. And that's
I
kind of
love
it.
that.
Yeah.
I love that because you have kind of like you kind of follow your passion, and it all just followed you. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
It just, you manifested it for yourself,
Absolutely.
which is something that I absolutely love. And myself, I love directing myself, but not necessarily dubbing, but in terms of demos and that
Right.
whole creative process of being able to take it from the ground up to something beautiful.
Yeah.
And so let me ask you, so 20 years has passed and or so. And so how has the industry evolved and changed since you first were in it?
Oh my God, night and day. Back in the day when I was first started, and first of all, I felt like I was coming into this super late because I was already in my 30s, I want to say, when I started getting into this. And most people, get in their 20s, they're doing this, or even earlier. So I felt like a super late bird, but that's been the story of my life. I'm a late bloomer
That's
in everything.
funny. I was actually in my 30s too, because
Yeah.
I was in corporate. I was actually in education. I came from corporate to education, and I wanted to before you go on, I did want to say, what did you do in corporate? Because that's always interesting to me.
You're going to
Yeah.
laugh. I was a paralegal manager for the electric company in their law department.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Yeah. Well, no,
Crazy.
nothing surprises me actually.
So like legal jargon, medical
Yep,
jargon,
you've got it.
I've got that locked, unlocked. Yeah, it's crazy.
Awesome.
But what was I saying
So
before?
in 20 years, I'm sorry.
Oh yeah. That's okay.
Yeah.
All good.
I got you off track there, but I was so interested. I was always interesting to find out what corporate places people
know.
come from.
I know, 'cause
You know,
it's like-
it's such a different world.
It's such a different world, but it's definitely helped my business as far as knowing how to communicate, being responsive, and just general email etiquette, that kind of thing goes a long way. But back when I first started, you needed to be where your agent was. You had to go in person to audition, and it started to slowly switch to where you could record at home and then send it in an MP3. But for the most part, like, it was super hard to get an LA agent if you were not in LA, or even in New York or wherever. You had to be there locally, physically, because they had so many other talent that was right there, hop, skip, and a jump that they could grab. So that has completely changed, especially since COVID, because now everything's, remote or phoned in or whatever. That's probably the biggest thing. Also, because of that, it's exploded the amount of voiceovers because there's been such a spotlight on it, especially with all the new animated movies. I mean, back in the day, I had Cinderella and Bambi, those movies, which were classics, Snow White. But now we have a new one coming out, several coming out every year. And they've got these celebrities attached to it. So people, the general audience, are seeing these celebs do these voices, and they're like, oh, I want to do that voice, or I could do that voice. And they think it's like, oh, it's super easy. That'd be fun. Let me go do some voiceover. Not realizing it's a process. You have to learn. You have to know how to act, first of all. It's not just about your voice. And take the training, learn the craft. So I think that has sort of opened the door for way more people. So it's super competitive now. And you're not just competing with people in your local area or in your state, or not even in your country, in other countries now, because everybody can now just kind of send stuff in electronically. So technology has definitely improved it, as well as, having a booth. Again, it used to be like, I just have a crappy little setup in my closet, and now people have these amazing, beautiful booths with lighting and all this stuff. And I mean, technology has come so far, so that's a whole nother thing too. So a lot has changed. A lot has changed.
But you have evolved along with that, and now you mentioned something about acting, and of course I always like to talk about acting. When you kind of made the shift, or kind of also in parallel working with dubbing, you're talking about acting on the fly. I mean, I think that becomes like front and center in terms of what are the qualifications that you need as an actor or as a voice actor to really get into this industry. And maybe I can just have you explain dubbing kind of, from the beginning for the bosses who are not necessarily as familiar with, the dubbing industry.
Yeah. So basically, if you don't know what dubbing is, it's essentially taking a movie or a TV show from another language and putting it into English. So you don't have to watch with subtitles. You can actually hear the English spoken while you're watching the video. And our goal is to make sure that the lip flaps match as close as possible so that it doesn't take you out of that and you forget that you're watching a dub. It's a long process. A lot goes into it. It's very detailed, which I'm not going to go into all the gory details of it. But the main thing that I'm looking for when I'm hiring and casting someone to do a dub is that they can act, that I believe that their voice is coming out of the face that I'm seeing on screen, and that they're able to give all the nuances of that performance. And it's actually really cool in my opinion because it's so much closer to being on stage or being on set and diving into a character and get all that juicy goodness versus reading a 3-second tag or a 30-second copy for medical whatever. So there's a lot more that goes into it, and it's definitely a skill that has to be learned by doing it. Rinse and repeat kind of thing. It does take practice because it can be very challenging and overwhelming at first because there's a lot going on, because not only are you walking in blind, you have no idea. When you book a dub, you have no idea if you're the lead, if you're an incidental, how many characters you're doing, what the show's about, how long, all this stuff. You have no clue. So it's the director's job to fill that in for you, explain the show, who your character is, what they're about, what's going on in the scene. And then you watch the scene and you're seeing this rhythm band go by with the dialogue screaming by like karaoke. And you're trying to read, you're trying to watch the video. Your eyes are sort of doing this back and forth to try and understand everything. And you're seeing it for the first time. I've seen it maybe 2 or 3 times at this point. But you're seeing it for the first time. So I'll give you a freebie of like, you're watching it for the first time just to know what the heck is going on and who are these people and what's happening. And then we'll watch it a second time. So now you okay, you understand the scene, you understand what's going on. And now you can start maybe looking closer at the faces on screen and see what their mouths are doing or see how their reaction is, the projection of how loud they are, soft. And then we'll do a take, and then we'll do another take and put it all together and review it. And I'm looking at the dialogue to make sure that you're saying all the right words and you're not mispronouncing anything and all of that good stuff. And it's a lot. And it takes about, I'd say if for a newbie, about 15 to 20 minutes to get into the groove of it. If it's like their first time. But even experienced dubbers, they'll come in and they'll watch it, and it takes them a little bit of time to get warmed up too. And that's just the nature of it. But it's like everything's firing all at once. It can be very overwhelming, but it's so much fun once you get the hang of it and you get in the groove, and you're just like, oh, all right, then we're going, and it's so much fun.
So in terms of directing, let's say if you were directing just a script that was not on the screen, and you're just directing a commercial for someone versus directing, a scene, a dub scene, it seems like you have to know. I don't know. The directing is different. I mean, I feel like you have to know so much more quicker when you're doing the dubbing, because you have to also impart like the actual scene, what's happening to the actor, and if the actor's not getting it or is not embodying the character in the right way, then you've got to figure out, well, how am I going to get them so that it makes a believable scene? And then if not, what do you do? I mean, have you had actors that just didn't work out, and then you had to essentially say I'm sorry, and then recast? I can't imagine. So explain
horrible.
Some of the differences. Explain some of the differences because like my directing for a demo is completely different, because we're taking the words and we're creating the scene, we're making it up. This, you have the scene already, and you've got to try to communicate that to the actor, and more. I would imagine.
I mean, on the one side, it's kind of nice because you already have this template of what you need to do. You basically have to try to match their energy, match their tone, match it so it looks like what you're doing out of here is coming out of what you see. So in that sense, it's a little bit simpler because you can see what's happening. With a commercial, or even when you're auditioning for a dub, you don't have the luxury of the video to see what's going on or see what's happening in the scene. So you have to make that up in your mind, and you have to find those nuggets in the script, in the dialogue, that might clue you into, where are they? What's happening? Why did they say this line? What does that mean? What is the intention behind that? What might be happening? And you have to somehow create that in your head, make a choice and go with it. Very much like when you're doing a commercial script. It's a lot of script analysis when you're looking at that stuff. And so even it's kind of cool,
never
actually.
Get the scene. You don't ever get the video, do you? When
very
you're
rarely. Very, very rarely. Yeah. You might, if we are doing in-person auditions, we do VTKs, which is a video test kit, and that will have the actor come in. They'll do an audition in person to the video, to the scene. So they'll see what's happening. They'll see the actors and everything, and they'll get directed. So it's a directed audition. That's about the only time. Very rarely will we send out a clip. It'll just be the sides, and they'll just have that to go on and wing it a prayer and figure it out and make a strong choice. Read through that analysis, look through everything, pick out whatever you can, make a strong choice, go with it. Because again, I'm listening for your acting chops as well as if I believe the voice coming out of the face. But even if I'm hearing someone do a commercial, I'm still in that visual sense of, who are you talking to? Are you connected? Are you just phoning this in? Are you just reading this? It's very similar, because there's a lot of times too where I'll have clients like, they sound like they're reading. It's like, well, they kind of are, because they're reading the scroll going by. But you have to make it sound like you're not reading, just like you would a commercial or a video game or anything. You have to make it conversational. That's the name of the game in dubbing, is conversational. We want real, grounded, authentic voices, authentic acting, not, hi, how are you? I am just good. You know?
Yeah, absolutely. So what tips would you say then, what could you give a voice actor that wants to get into dubbing? Like, what can they do to prepare themselves maybe and maybe practice or you know, coach with you?
Yeah, absolutely. I do
coaching with you, but
I'm
what can they do if they're interested in dubbing? What's your best tips?
Watch some dubs. Go on Netflix, go on Hulu, Disney, Amazon, whatever. Watch some dubs that are good, and watch how their acting is, or listen to how their acting is in relation to what's happening in the scene. A way to practice is kind of cool. Not exact, but it will help you with that sight reading of looking up to the video and looking down to the dialogue, is put on subtitles. Grab your favorite show or movie, put on the subtitles, watch it with the sound on, with the subtitles, read the subtitles, and get used to switching back your eyesight from the video to the subtitles, and then rewind it, mute it, and then say it with the subtitles, and see how close you can match to their mouths or whatever. I mean, it's not going to be exact, but that will help you with that skill of sight reading, of going back and forth from the video to the dialogue.
Well, then I should be amazing, Jessica, because I'm old and I have the subtitles on all the time because
I do too.
I can't hear. So I've got the eyesight going.
Same.
And I don't necessarily practice along with that, but no, that's a great tip, and to actually watch dubs, I think is great. And I myself have watched dubs, and I've watched people do it because I've watched you direct people. Yeah. And for me, I think it's do you think it's something that all voice actors would love to do, or is it kind of like, do you feel like it's a niche where I feel like people that do audiobooks, they love their audiobooks, people that dub love dubbing, or do you think it's just something like, oh, it's another genre, it's just, oh, I can, what's your experience with talent?
I think it's a little of both. I think it is sort of a niche, and I have my core group of actors that it's like the standard dubbers or whatever, but I'm always finding new talent, always bringing new people into the fold, and I've never really had someone go, oh, oh, I don't like this, or this isn't for me. Maybe they did, and I didn't know about it. But usually, even though they might be scared and nervous getting into it because they're not sure about it, like anything new, any change, once they do it, they're like, oh my God, this is kind of fun. I really like this. And so then they like, tell me more. How do I get into it? What do I do? How do I need to, get more of this type of work? And so it kind of fuels their fire to do it or be more interested in it. So I think it's definitely grown a lot in the last couple of years, for sure. And I don't think it's going away anytime soon because there's so much content. There's so much content out there from other countries that are being brought into the United States and getting dubbed into English. So I don't think the work is going anywhere anytime soon. So I think we're okay.
The elephant in the room, right? Synthetic voices, AI. How does that work into dubbing, or does it not? Or what are your thoughts?
I don't think
is it a threat?
I don't think it's a threat now. And if it is, it's going to be minor. I don't think it's going to take over lead voices because it cannot reproduce these performances, the nuances that humans can. And I think we've got that covered and okay. And also I've heard stories about companies trying to use AI to, dub a lead character, and the audience isn't buying it. They're like, that looks weird, that sounds weird, it doesn't match or whatever. And so I think for the main characters, lead characters and everything, we're good, we're okay. It's not going to go the AI route. It might change to where we get... they might end up using some type of AI situation that is ethically sourced AI voices for Walla, for the background noise, like, in airports and restaurants and things like that. Because that's just this murmur, this hum bed of voices that you hear in the background and not necessarily actual dialogue that you can make out and hear what they're saying. So if they had... But they already have a lot of those like sound beds, that we've recorded over many years, and they can just plop that in. So it's kind of already done. So I don't know why they would actually need an AI for that. So I don't necessarily see. I mean, if anything, I think AI might come in on more of the production side, the back side of it, not the performance side. More of the organization of files and management and things like that, or QCing, stuff like that. I don't know that it's going to really impact the performance side of things for dubbing yet. And I mean, who knows? Anything's possible. But also to get all of these companies on the same page, if somehow this fantastic software came out that is able to match the voice to the original actor or change whatever, to get everybody on board with that, I mean, that's a huge feat in and of itself, and I don't see that happening anytime soon. So I think we're okay.
So, if you talk about when we dub, we're dubbing from one language to another. Typically, for us, I mean, we would be the English, and so how much of a disconnect is there because of the language differences? In terms of like lip flap and believability, is there from certain languages, and are some languages easier to dub than others?
Oh, yeah. There's two things. Some languages, their lips barely move. So they're talking like this, and it's like, what do you say? There's no labial movements. Oh, my God. And then there's some, like Spanish and French, where they are motor mouths, and they're like... And what takes, in Spanish, it takes them 10 words to say what we can say in 5 in English. But there's, like, all these, like... Feliz cumpleaños, mi amor. It's like, happy birthday, hun. It's so different. But yet we would then have to add on extra words. Stretch it out, add on words, because there's still all that mouth flap that we have to cover. So we would have to add on words. Or in the opposite of French, they can say something very short, like 2 words, and it takes us 7 words to say. So how do we, like they say nothing.
Who does that editing? That's interesting. Who does that editing?
That
is
you,
the or?
It sometimes is me. It's the adapter. So which I also do. Adaptation is probably the most important and critical step in the whole dubbing process. That's basically where the studio will send it to a translator. They'll translate the Spanish into English. Then that goes to the adapter. The adapter then takes that English translation, rewrites it, to make it sound conversational, make it match the lip flaps, adding words, subtracting words, making jokes work that might not make sense to us in their, it does in their language, but it doesn't jive with us. And then also syncing it all up so it matches, the lines are matched up to start of the mouth opening to the mouth closing, as well as adding in all of the vocal efforts. So laughs, sneezes, coughing, crying, breathing, fight scenes, getting punched, coughing, throat clearing, anything like that is always going to be in brackets, so that we have those vocal efforts, because it's going to look funny if you're just talking and all of a sudden you do this and like you don't hear anything. Right. What was that? It's like, it was a sigh. Okay, got it. So we have to put sighs in brackets so that the actor knows that they have to sigh when they see that chest movement. So it's a lot.
Okay, so business-wise, right, it seems like a lot of work, right? So I have a film, right, and where does the money come from? The distribution, the licensing of the film in different languages?
I think so, yeah, because it'll be like a Netflix will go out and they'll buy the property, the distribution rights for a show,
which
from
is
the
probably,
original person.
Yeah, where the money comes from, and then that pays for it. Because it seems like an awful lot of work sometimes, right?
It is a huge amount of work.
A huge amount of work to get to a product that, you don't know if it's going to, I mean, it's like any movie that comes out, right? I mean, you put a lot of investment into it.
Yeah.
So I imagine that, it's just got to be the purchase of the rights to the movie that is where the money is. Because is the money, does the voice actor get money? I mean, I'm sure they get paid. You know what I mean? But I mean, let's talk about the, how well does the voice actor get paid or the dubber get paid for this? Is this an industry that, is lucrative?
It can be. If you book a lead role, it can be very lucrative, because that means multiple sessions, especially if it's a TV show, because that's multiple episodes. So you could be a 6-episode show, a 12-episode show, a 20-episode show. So if you're a lead character, you're in all those episodes, you're getting paid for every single time you go into the booth for a session, and we can cover as much as we possibly can in a session until we exhaust all of the lines for that character. And so
but
right
you get
now,
paid per session, right? You don't get paid per airing of, like a nice national.
It's not royalties. There's no royalties. There's no kickbacks.
That would be
There's no
nice.
nothing. It would be so nice, especially if it took off or whatever.
Yeah.
Oh my God. But no, it's per session. If it's a union project, it's under the union contract, the dubbing union contract, which I think now it's like $190 something per hour with a 2-hour minimum. And so if you're hired for a 4-hour session, that's, $195 times 4. And if you go in for, if we finish with you in 3 hours, you still get paid for the 4 hours. If we have a pickup, you still get paid for that 2-hour minimum, even if you're in there for 15 minutes, you still get paid. So now, pickups are kind of nice too.
Do you now negotiate in contracts the AI writer? Because let's say you need a pickup and the actor isn't available, right? Can they utilize the voice to create an AI voice to then maybe do a pickup?
I've not had that come up yet. And I think I don't deal with the contracts with the actors. That's the studio that handles all of that. So I think some of them might have an AI writer, some of them might not. So if you're an actor and into dubbing and you want to check that out, make sure you read your contracts and see if it's in there. And if it's not, ask them and see if they'll do it, because a lot of them will. But at this point, I don't think we've had that issue where we always find workarounds, honestly. Like even if we missed a line, maybe we have a backup, or we can Frankenstein something together. Or if we missed a breath or a laugh here, I'll just steal it from somewhere else and plug it in there. So I don't have to have anything to save that money for the client, so that we don't have to worry about that pickup. And even for incidental, sometimes I'll jump in the booth, and if I just need a line or something to cover whatever, I'll just jump in there and let me just do it. It'll be really fast. It's fine. Yeah. I'll just do it. So, but yeah, it can be lucrative if you're a lead, because that means multiple sessions. If you're an incidental, it's just fun practice, and maybe it's one session, one and done, and you're in and out, and that's still fun. But also I think when actors do get on the radar of these studios and directors, and they do it one time, two times, and they do well, excuse me, and we like working with cool people, good actors. So we're going to have you back, and you'll get in that roster, in that pool of people, and you just kind of start working. It's kind of cool that way. So
yeah. Well, that's nice. So then the first thing outside of, if voice actors want to get into dubbing is, I would say bump up your acting skills, right?
Definitely. Definitely. Yes.
Do you have good recommendations for, acting classes, like, in-person acting classes, online acting classes, or working with a coach, perhaps?
All of
online?
It. Honestly,
all of it. Mm-hmm.
I feel like if you can do in-person, that's great, because obviously you're feeding off the energy of everybody. I prefer being in person with people versus Zoom, but Zoom is obviously much more efficient and effective, especially if you aren't able to, travel to do in person. One-on-ones are also great if you're working with a coach or a teacher, because all the focus is on you, and you can really hone in on what needs you need to work on and improve on. And but also the group session is great because you can learn from others, and what I like to say, steal with love, and take a little bit of that and put it in my pocket, and I'm going to use that.
I mean, that's life, isn't it? I think
100%.
That's how we do it. I think all of us, when we teach voice acting, we want to get to the same end result. We want authentic, believable performances.
Absolutely.
And so however we say it to get the actor to get there, we're all trying to get to the same end result. So, yeah, absolutely. So in terms of, and that I believe also is going to translate well to their voice, so they can do dubbing and they can do voice acting, because acting is just going to help you all the way around. And acting will even help you in medical and corporate. And I say that just because, that's me, and that's my geeky, my geeky place.
It is, yes.
I think it can help you even more, because that stuff is typically very dry and boring, and you've got to make that come alive in some way to make it interesting to people, so that they want to listen to it. I mean, right now I'm going through some online courses, and I'm telling you, like, it is tough. It is tough to, I know I need to know this information, and I am just like, oh God, I got to do 4 more hours of this. And so it really helps when, you've got the skills to be engaging and to like connect with the listener on the other end.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if I am hearing you correctly, of course, acting would be number one. Acting would be number one to help get you into dubbing, and then of course watching dubbed TV shows, and really getting in on that. And then what about networking? How can they network with the places that might hire them?
Absolutely. Research. Google is your best friend. Look up and search dubbing houses, dubbing recording studios in your neck of the woods. See who's out there. And also, I will say another trick is when you're watching these shows and movies online that are dubs, at the very end sometimes they'll have the credits for the dubs of who the actors are, who the studio is, who the director and the casting, the producer are, so you can actually see what studios are doing the dubs that way, and then you can look those up and see if you can't find an email. And a lot of those studios have their own rosters that they're actively looking for talent, so you could reach out to one of them and like, hey, are you open for taking on new talent? I'm interested in dubbing, or I've done a dub here and there, I'd love to be considered for a future dub, and see, just throw whatever you can at the wall and see what sticks.
Would you say that the majority of it is done in LA and in the big cities where
a chunk of it is, but I know Dallas, I want to say Dallas, or one of the big cities in Texas, they do a lot of anime with Crunchyroll, I think. But there's other dub houses. There's one in Florida called The Kitchen in Miami. There's obviously several overseas in Europe and elsewhere. So again, it's just, Google. Google is your best friend. Find where they are and search them out, and do some research on that to figure out who's doing what and where, and you'll find it. And I would say networking is to find those people, and seek them out and hit them up, but be human and personal about it. Don't just be like needy, like, hi, I'm so and so, here's my demo, listen to me. No, make it
and be memorable.
Make a connection. Make a connection to be memorable, so that because I get sometimes I'll get those emails that just say, here's my demo, I'd love to work with you sometime. I'm like, great, I don't know you from who are you? Next, so yeah.
I've been dying to ask you this. So I've been dying because, of course, this goes along with, I feel like we're networking and, there's a lot of talk about, when you're running your business, because there's, you can be the best actor in the world, but if nobody knows about it, right, it's hard for you to get hired. And so I kind of over the years have established a brand for myself, and a lot of people that know me for the voboss brand know that I have the red headphones or I have the red lipstick because I talk about it all the time. And my Anganguza brand is blue. And guess what? Jessica Blue. If anybody doesn't know Jessica or has never met Jessica, you can find her easily because she's got very signature branding. So let's talk about that for a little bit. If you don't mind, of course.
You can't really see it well in this lighting, but I do have blue hair and I have really blue eyes.
You do, yes, you do.
Which pops when the blue starts to fade and get lighter. And my logo is blue. I always have blue nails. I'm wearing blue. Like, my car is blue. Blue is my favorite color. I've loved it since I was a kid. When I was a kid and I was sharing a room with my sister, we had bunk beds and everything, and then my mom cleaned out this other room and we got to switch, and I got my own room finally, and I got to decorate it however I wanted.
It was blue.
Blue carpet, blue painted on one wall, blue wallpaper everywhere.
I had blue stripes. I mean, blue is one of my absolute favorites. I had blue. I painted on one. I had an accent wall in my bedroom, and I'm an 80s girl, right? 70s, 80s girl.
Yes.
It was literally like 2 different shades of blue, and it was like a big V.
Yes.
It was hysterical. And
That's
I
awesome.
loved it because it just, but I will say that your branding works so well for you. And I feel like, did you do that because not only your favorite color is blue, but because you wanted to become memorable in your business? Is that another angle to it?
That part never even hit. I'll tell you how. So, newsflash, blue is not my real name. It's my stage name. What? Yeah. I know. Secrets galore. No, it actually came up. So I've been rocking the blue hair since 2001. Okay. And I think it was around 2000.
Before it was a thing, right? I mean, really. I mean, I would say when I grew up, it was only if you were punk.
Exactly.
And then you know what I mean? And
I feel like I started
in your hair.
I feel like I sort of started this trend, like it was acceptable because also working in a law firm, corporate with blue hair. And I'm like, if they don't like it, they can go pound sand because I know how to do my job. I'm doing my job, and this has nothing to do with what I can do. So, but I was in a workout group with some fellow actors, and one of my friends, I think I had come in with a blue stripe in my hair. I was testing the waters out to see if I liked it or not, and I had just one little blue strand. And she says, "Oh, you should change your name to Jessica Blue." And I'm like, "Oh, I like that. I think I'm gonna do that." From that point on, I became Jessica Blue in all things voiceover and acting, and I've never looked back. So
it is so memorable. It is so attached to you, and I think it's brilliant. I mean, whether you intended that to be or not, like I will always know how to spot you in a crowd, number one, but I'll also remember your name. Yeah. And so I'm always telling my students that, until people know who you are, I mean, you have to establish a brand. I mean, and so I'm like, well, make yourself a great actor and associate yourself with maybe another brand that in your demo that people can say, oh, I love that Ford spot that you did, or I love that, that movie you did, or whatever. If you can make yourself memorable in that kind of a way where you're attaching yourself to a brand or a show, right? Yeah. Then I think that starts to get the ball rolling, because I think success begets success. And like you said, once you start and you get into kind of the circles where you're dubbing and people like you, then, it's nice because you get that kind of repeat work. And I think that's important in terms of, if you want to build your business.
Absolutely.
And it's not, thank you for the explanation of your brand. I love it.
Absolutely. But it's not who it's who knows you, because that's how you're going to become memorable. And hired over and
Absolutely.
over again. So it is very
Exactly.
important. I agree with you. But thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
So if you make it easy to stand out and be unique, and I mean,
Yep.
you've done it brilliantly. So
Thank you.
Jessica, this was so much fun.
Thank you.
Thank
Yes,
you
it
so much for
has.
joining me today.
Of course.
Yeah.
My pleasure.
And so I do know that you did say that a random listener is going to receive
Ooh.
something special with you. A
Yes.
potential. Did you say a 1-hour coaching session?
Yes. 1 hour
awesome.
free
So-
coaching session for dubbing. Yes.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say randomly choose one listener. And so in order for me to randomly choose a listener, you guys have to submit a testimonial, maybe on this episode saying, that you like this episode. And so I absolutely, on the VOboss website at voboss.com, you can submit your testimonial. If you do that for this episode with Jessica and you mention Jessica, we will then randomly select a winner within a week of the episode release to get a free 1-hour dubbing coaching session. Yay! That's awesome. Thank you, Jessica. That's so
Of course.
generous.
My pleasure.
So, all right. Well, again, thanks so much. This has been wonderful. And bosses, keep a lookout for the VO Peeps workout. Which, gosh, is it May, June? I'm trying to think. When?
I think it's February.
When am I having?
I think it's
Oh my God, February.
It's next month.
Oh my gosh.
Right?
Next month. Oh, that's right. It is next month. Next month we have you for VO Peeps. So,
Yeah.
guys, go get that ticket because Jessica sells out very, very quickly. And thanks again.
Thank you.
I really, really appreciate it. I'm going to give a great big shout out to our sponsor, IPDTL. You too can network and connect. Find out more at ipdtl.com. Bosses, have an amazing week, and we'll see you next week.